Thank you. I want to echo Mike's sentiments at the end of his with the beginning of mine. These are some of the most exciting times in the world of display. We're going to redo some of the things we did wrong decades ago and sometimes in the mid of the last century. But I've learned three fundamental things that I want to share with you immediately for the years I've spent in the business. Number one, you walk into a room, your first impression is the video. That's what you see before anything starts. If you've got something bright, colorful, high contrast, does simple things like fill the screen, you make a nice impression. Second thing we've learned, in the history of television, we have never had a smooth launch. We've never put together a technology that worked fine. So that's just been one of the things. And the third thing that I find somewhat distressing, we do extensive beta testing of every new product launch in your installations. No one has the time in manufacturing to look at the old systems, the legacy systems, different brands, put it together. So we ship it to you, you put it together, and these have been wonderful times for me being a trainer in signal diagnostics for digital communications. How many of you in the last 12 months have plugged something digital into something else digital and had less than perfect respect and smile? So we have seen some issues out there in the field. One of the things we do, we teach a 4-day session on video calibration, and we fill up a room with displays and we distribute signals. And as the godmother of the business just said a little while ago, everything always works in the setup day. Is that correct? Setup day, we always work? That's good. We have not survived any course in 2 years without intermittent and multiple failures of signal distribution. And for me, that's wonderful, because one of the things we teach is how to use a video signal generator on one end of the cable and a video analyzer on the other to see what funny thing happened on the way to my TV set with the signal to sort of quote Zero Mostel. And you know, the last 2 years have been kind of like clubbing baby seals. I mean, the failures are an epidemic. It's fun. We can deal with that. So, a couple of simple things. 4K, like 3D, was announced as an exciting technology that meant virtually nothing to anybody unless you were sitting in a place where the specification said you should sit, which is 1.5 screen heights away. The BBC just spent a small fortune figuring out what % of the population of the BBC viewers did that, and they could have asked anyone in the business, it's zero. No one sits that close to a display. It just doesn't happen. These funny initials, high dynamic range, wide color gamut, electro-optical transfer function. Who's heard that? How about the term gamma? Who's heard gamma? Raise your hand. Okay. Who can explain gamma to an end user in 30 seconds or less? So here's the situation. Gamma has actually been written extensively about, makes the engineers nervous. So we're going to call it electro-optical transfer function and confuse everyone for another 20 years. But it actually is a rethinking of the perception of people to light. And people like Dolby Labs and Society of Motion Picture and TV Engineers have reevaluated and quantifying it differently, so have a much better handle on it. And bit depth. Okay, these things are strange. Any of you remember 8-bit video signals? Who remembers that? Who's still watching it? All of you. Okay, we haven't changed much on that to begin with. Everything you put into old facilities right now will be wonderfully obsolete, so you'll get to reinstall them all over again. We think that's a good thing. Okay, and that 1.5 picture height, that's a specification from the original roadmap from the International Telecommunications Union. Who's heard of ITU? They write the specs for almost everything we do in our life. It's part of the United Nations. 193 countries actually agree on something. And that's how we make something in Bollywood and sell it in Hollywood. When it comes to selling video, programming, and movies, we can actually agree because we can't survive on American movies in just America anymore. That 1.5 picture height is the spec for optimum viewing of 3840 by 2160, also known as 4K. Now, unless you're sitting at a workstation, 4K means nothing to you. What does happen with 4K at 1.5 picture heights? That's where you approach failure where you see pixels. So you can sit that close, but if you're not sitting that close, there's no reason to have it. So in the InfoComm industries, it's virtually meaningless. So the excitement, the launch of all this thing was wonderful, but it didn't really mean much in the real world. Now, this actually means something. High dynamic range is how we see. We did a nice project with the camera crew way back in the days of plasma, nice displays. And remember a product called the Pioneer Elite? called the Kuro. Kuro is Japanese for black. So we had a Kuro, very high quality, high dynamic range panel next to an older Pioneer, and we showed the camera guys, same picture, 2 panels. We asked them which one's brighter. They picked the high contrast one, which was 40% darker. So what we see as brightness is contrast. So we get to high dynamic range. This is where your image pops off the screen. It is the single most exciting thing we've seen in a while. We've been trying to do this for a long, long time. Now, when you get the blacks a lot better on display, you think it's brighter. Now, how do we define blacks? Absence of light, correct? Now, if you look at these screens right in front of you, the space between the top of the slide and the black surround of the slide is video black. That's the blackest image you're going to see. So in this particular room, you do not have high contrast. It's not going to happen here with the setup we have in the room environment we've got. There's a document I want you all to be infinitely familiar with. It's called PISCAR, Projected Image System Contrast Ratio. Who has the document in hand? Raise your hand, please. Okay, so InfoComm has done a spectacular job. I'm a big fan of PISCAR. I joined the committee because I love the concept. The implementation in the field has been a little bit less than universal. Okay, but what they will tell you in this particular room, based upon the content that you're going to be displaying, be it full motion video or just active slides with pie charts, they'll tell you a contrast ratio. And if you're dealing with architects, designers, and you want to talk about standards, one of the ways I communicate with an architect and a designer is to simply say we've got a standard from an international organization that tells me what my client needs to have. I need to do something with the lighting in this room. I need to do something with the projector, with the screen, to make it meet the standards so your client is happy. So based upon standards, I can actually have an intelligent decision with architects. It absolutely defines what you need for every installation in the real world. The new wrinkle on this car is going to be the addition of direct view display devices, because there are some rooms you can't use projectors, some rooms just dictate you're going to use flat panels or LED walls. That's going to be normal. Now, the concept of f-stop comes from the fundamentals of photography. If you remember the old James Bond movies, they started with a circle getting smaller. That's the iris inside a camera. And an f-stop is generally a double or a half the amount of light, so it's significant. We've had SDR, standard dynamic range. At the best we've ever done has been 10 f-stops to begin with. And we had decent pictures in SDR. Going into HDR, you're talking up to 16. There was a revolutionary new camera launched from the Arri company, the 65, and that one would do 16 f-stops. It starts with the camera. So what do you actually see? Getting 1,000-to-1 contrast ratio has been our goal for 20 years, and we're now doing it with some of these high-power displays. Some of the OLEDs and LEDs, and Pete mentioned the launch of LEDs into Ever Industries. What I'd like to add to his information there is some of the LEDs are self-emissive. We are actually looking at the surface, and the LEDs are turning on and off. Many of the existing ones with LCD screens in front of the LCD are transmissive. It's a lights out. The LCD opens and closes. The problems are in the speed of opening and closing, and the fact that they close, they're not off, they leak. So the OLEDs, if you just glance at them, because they're self-emissive, will have blacker blacks. You'll eventually see quantum dots, quantum nanotubes, and self-emissive quantum dot devices. Viewing angle will get better, contrast will get better, but getting beyond 1,024, jumping into HDR, you're looking at 65,000. It's not an incremental improvement, it's a significant improvement. And the human eye is pretty sensitive to contrast. That 65-to-1 wakes up an industry. Now, people have been telling me for a long time, we're approaching the limits of the human eye bunk. What you can see going outside of a dark hotel room to a ski slope with bright light and snow, depending upon which biologist you're looking at, somewhere between 38 and 50 f-stops, way beyond anything technology can do. So nowhere near approaching what we see from time to time. So this PISCAR thing specifies what you're going to be installing based upon real-world situations that the customer is going to do. So the first thing we start with is information viewing. And this was actually staggering. Jumping into 7-1 contrast ratio, mathematics classroom, black text, white paper. We can actually see 3.5-to-1. 7.5-to-1 is passing the standard. Jumping in here, basic decision making of 15-to-1, decent. Critical decision making 50-to-1. So you tell me what's happening in a classroom. Tell me what's happening in a boardroom. Tell me what's happening in an electronic signage environment. You can go here and look and see what category the clients demand, specify, and write your specification based upon this. It's a recipe book for client satisfaction. Your work's done for you. Full motion video now. They're very careful to state this is not theatrical. Theatrical is actually about 100 to 1, but in corporate environments and corporate communications, 80 to 1 is sufficient. And I'll tell you, in this particular room, you can't manage 80 to 1 with this amount of light. No matter what screen, no matter what projector you put in, you're not going to fulfill 80 to 1 in this room. So the ambient light in your room has everything to do with it. Now, this becomes somewhat simple. Now, when you use this thing to begin with, every proposal I come up with comes up with a performance specification for my client. I'm telling them point blank what I'm going to build right up front. It's part of what we do. We'll talk about why do I come up with this number? Well, it's InfoComm's committee. It's international. It's working all around the world for us from time to time. If you can design the systems for it, I'll tell you what you will be able to do and what you won't be able to do. The simplest, the most logical thing to ever do is to simply design your room properly, and you will never be able to do that. So the two other things you can do, A, put in more light from the projector. That takes care of 1/2 of the contrast problem, the white part. B, change the screen. And as you walk around the show floor, I want you to take careful notice of the ambient light projecting screens. And they're playing with physics to accentuate the blacks at the expense of the whites. And people have told me for years, you're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. Oh, Peter's rich. We see contrast as brightness. So if I increase the quality of the blacks by 20%, and I hit the whites 20%, the sum total to a human eye that is non-linear, non-logical, we're not machines, you see a better picture. So these lights and screens really work well. Now, at the end of the day, we bring in meters, we take measurements, we perform an audit on our build, and we put it together, and then I have a document for the client and the integrator. That works out really nice. Now, this wide color gamut. The colors you have in your TV now are 27 years old. Simple things. Years ago, right here in Disney, we had a project with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola Red is outside of the TV system from 1990. It looks orange. Ferrari Red looks orange. Roses look orange. It's pretty stupid. So Coca-Cola decided they wanted to have their red, which is rather specific and predates the color television system, on their projectors. So we had to modify projectors with color filters to get the red correct. Now with wide color gamut, you put together a signage system. Over here with a wide gamut. Over there with the old 1990 turkey, and it is day and night difference. You want to get noticed in the sign? Use high dynamic range. Use wide gamut. It's very, very different. Now, what are they based on? Digital Cinema Initiative 2011, that worked out fine. SMPTE P3 is pretty much the same as DCI. And this International Telecommunications 2020 is a spectacular design. But there's a simple joke, it has to do with them. What is the difference between the abominable snowman and 2020 color? The answer is people have actually seen the abominable snowman. 2020 color is a wonderful dream. We will get there one day, but not this year. So as much as it's part of the spec, it's a future spec. We'll get there one day, but going to P3 is spectacular, okay? When you get red to the reds, it really works out nicely. Now, in the 1930s, we quantified how the human eye sees with a graph. So we could actually talk about color intelligently, okay? This specification, if you look at that shark fin shape, that's all the colors the human eye could see. That does the best job I've ever seen of doing it, okay? P3 is smaller, so we're settling quite a bit. Look at the reds, they don't extend out to the top. Look at the greens, nowhere near the top. So this P3 thing, the DCI thing, are we settling? Absolutely. What's good about P3? Well, number one, since 2011, we have movie content, thousands of movies done that way, and we can build the machines. Why do I like P3? Look at 1990. That's what you're watching at home. So when you look at the new displays and they say 90%, 99% of P3, spectacular. Hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be talking 99% of 2020. But I'll tell you, it's not going to happen this year or next. Ask me after 2020 and we'll figure out how long it's going to take. But from P3 to 2020 will be wonderful. You'll redo all your systems all over again. But right now, today, you can go from that mediocre 1990 antique to something better than clients have ever seen before. It's a huge step forward. Now this electro-optical transfer function, we like this, but we've been studying since the dawn of television how the human eye responds to more light. And the one thing we do know, it doesn't respond like a computer. So dealing with SMPTE, 208.4, which is pretty much the same thing as Dolby Labs, that is closer to how we see. It is, for content creation, a new language of light between HDR and wide gamut, and a better tracking of how the humans see. We're getting pictures where the average person, not the tech, the average person walks in and goes, wow, that blows away what I had in my boardroom before. And that's where everything comes together. It's significantly better. So, the old term was gamma. There was gamma for teleradiology. DCI gamma for the movie theaters is different than home gamma. And movie theater making was always 2.2. It took us years to figure out 2.2 was wrong. So eventually we came up with, H&86 from ITU. So new movie making is around 2.4. Now, 8-bit versus 10-bit. 1982, we're gonna go digital. We want 12-bit, we want 10-bit. What are we gonna do? Make a satellite work. Make the cables work. Hopefully, in a decade or so, we'll have a digital video disc. The size of the files of 10-bit was just too huge. We settled on 8-bit in 1982. It's time to go beyond it. That makes the shading of colors better. 256 shades doesn't give you enough definition in colors to make clouds look right, to make sand look right, to make hockey look right, to make a wall look right when you have different shades of white on it. Getting into 1024, significant step forward. Your slides look better. Your PowerPoints look better. Mixing video and PowerPoint look a lot better. 12-bit, I don't expect to see this market going 12-bit probably ever. You're not going to need it with light in the room. The 10-bit is going to be a major step forward, and all the cameras that are affordable can do 10-bit easily. So you get smoother pictures, makes a nice difference. Looking at the gradations here, when you see steps in clouds or steps in backgrounds, things aren't smooth. It's an artifact. It degrades the picture. When you take that artifact away, people like the pictures a whole lot better. Now, where do we go to make all this work from time to time? Well, first thing we have to do is get signal from point A to point B. That's not quite so easy. The major cost is going to be the bandwidth. The 10.2 gig spec just makes Cat5, barely at the edge. Any category cables are jumping in. The old UHD spec was 18 gig. That does not incorporate more pictures per second than the old 1939, 60 pictures per second. Pete talked this morning about going to 120 in America, 100 in Europe. We can't do that with 18 gig. We're out of space in 18 gig right now. And 18 gig will fail you on 10-bit. Earlier this year, to get everything we want, with the gamut, with the bit depth, with the big thing for sports and even people walking on stage on a camera, going to 100 or 120 pictures per second makes things look like 3D without being 3D. Got it? So this whole thing here is about making pictures more natural, more realistic. And you've probably seen some high frame rate movies. We did, some of the Harry Potter things. They called 48 pictures per second high frame rate. That was not even what we did in 1939. So as we're watching to see what's going on in the world of installation, we've been talking about building conduits into systems for years, and we're rarely having people pay attention. You put a cable in from point A to point B, I will tell you point blank, the ultimate and final job of that cable, no matter what it is, whether it's active optical, whether it's passive copper, active copper, the ultimate job of that cable is to just be a wire pull for the next generation of cable. Because when we get to 48 gig or beyond, you best be putting things together for your clients. You don't have to rip facilities apart to keep them current. So we've been talking about conduits for a very long time. It just makes sense. We've got a fluid world. Now, these are just the improvements that we know about right now. I was just dealing with a designer for a 10-story building, and he's saying, we're just going to run category cable. We're saying, okay, what's going to happen in 2024? Will that building still be here? Yeah, category cable won't work. He goes, won't be my problem. I don't like that sentiment. I want to keep that client past 2024. Okay, so my job is to keep the client current, keep the client paying me, because it's just too hard to find new clients. Keep the ones you have happy, make sure you're putting conduit in, and things will work. Now, here's a live view from my facility right now. We're looking at 17.81 gig coming out of my PC, and I can't get everything I want. That's nice and simple. Now, HDR, who's behind this HDR thing? Look at these people. You got Dolby jumping in, the BBC, NHK, Technicolor, Philips. These are the geniuses of our time. Samsung's got their own thing from time to time. It's real. There are billions being invested. And at the end of the day, if your client goes, that's better, those billions were wonderful, wonderful investments. So these are going to be great times. Are we within somewhat resembling a time limit? Outstanding. You get your footballs ready?
Football's ready. Okay, questions? Oh, way in the back. Was that not a question? Oh, not a question. Questions?
Everyone's easy, having a good time.
Somebody answer some questions. Make up something. Questions on either side of the room?
I'll simply tell you, these are golden days.
One over
The
the
pictures
corner.
will look better.
Just identify who you are, please, and ask your question. Talking to the black part of the cube.
Ooh, good text.
Bill, and I've got a question. For the emerging standards and stuff, when do you anticipate the HDR standards to be available so that we can actually work with architects and whatnot for ambient illumination, et cetera?
Okay, loaded question. Forgive me for sidestepping it to a degree, but we don't want standards for HDR. We want open architecture. For HDR and wide color gamut, this is 1939. What we've accommodated with the new HDMI specification is multiple EOTFs, because the Dolby one is slightly different than the BBC one. The BBC got together with NHK. You guys familiar with NHK, the Japanese version of the BBC? They've joined together for broadcast type HDR, which would be spectacular for sports. Samsung just launched their own version of dynamic high dynamic range, which is kind of redundant, but that means per frame, we can actually send information to the TV and modify parts of the screen. And very much like a surround sound system where your sound engineer tells your speakers what to do, your video engineer tells your pixels what to do. So we're going to have methods. So if you look at the Philips / Technicolor, they've joined forces, there's one. You look at the Samsung HDR10 Plus, there's two. Dolby Vision, there's three. Jumping into normal everyday HDR10, there's four. I may be missing one or two, but we're not done yet. So standards, no. Bandwidth for an integrated system, that's the only standard you need to worry about, because you're going to be changing the head end and the tail end on either end of that cable for years to come. But if you look for standards in high definition television, we standardize on Dolby Digital for surround sound.
Well, what I'm really looking for is the ability to go and talk to, we're in the gaming industry, and so we do a lot of event centers, lounges, things of that nature. So we have a lot of variance in illumination and what ambient illumination when we're using projectors and whatnot. And so what I'm really looking for is at least some design considerations which I can discuss intelligently with the electrical engineer, the lighting engineers, etc.
For gaming, I would point you towards the PISCAR 80:1 contrast ratio on the one side. Number two, in the gaming world, we had a phenomenal announcement I'm sure you're aware of yesterday. The new Microsoft Xbox will do 4K 60. And 60 pictures per second now is real in November from a box you can buy. They've already transmitted it in Europe, so I would say you've got to build your infrastructure in for 60 pictures per second, which for gaming is phenomenally better. 100 for gaming and 120 is spectacular, it's smoother motion. And getting your contrast ratio up to 80:1 breaks you into high dynamic range capability, and getting your boxes that distribute signals to be able to pass along HDR information should be something you test for in every facility. So you need some type of test kit that sends an HDR signal out at 4K 60, and the other half of the test kit is a receiver on the other end to make sure that a funny thing doesn't happen to the signal from your gaming console to your display. And I will tell you that all the infrastructure you put in before probably will fail. Your switchers, your distribution, even your basic cables may fail. Now, can we compress it down and make it work? Of course. Does that make you gamer delighted? Gamers are rather intolerant for artifacts, extremely intolerant for motion problems. So you're a great test case for high bandwidth systems for HDR. So HDR in gaming is phenomenal. Wide gamut is easy because it's a digital value. You don't have to get new cameras. So your question's awesome, but don't look for a standard. Look for methodologies. But your bandwidth on your installation is going to be absolutely critical, and you're going to have to learn to test for HDR. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, I got another one in the back. David?
Yeah, I'm just reading offline from some of the online comments and questions here. If you could address these quickly, because we're almost out of time. People are curious, will older HDMI cables, older
Slowly,
HDMI
please, say something
infrastructure...
again.
Slow
need to
down.
be- Will older HDMI cables and older infrastructure like HDMI transceivers need to be replaced? Do we have to go back and redo everything? And is there any improvement around how we're going to be transmitting these signals wirelessly? Because nobody wants wires anymore.
Well,
Those are
first
comments
part of the
coming
question,
back.
the HDR will make it through some of the old HDMI cables. The lowest common denominator HDR signal we measured from Blu-ray is 13.35 gig. That breaks the bank for Cat5 and it breaks the bank for the old HDMI cables. However, the high-speed HDMI cables went way beyond 10.2. For short lengths, you may be fine. For long lengths, you will not be fine.
Great. We're going to have to end there. We have our next speaker, Joel.